Put the money in the bag. Do it fast or I'll blow your brains out.
Well. What's we got here? Oi, old chap, put the pennies in the bag, will ya? Chop, ain't got all day, me don't. Nice bottle of water for your troubles yet. Cheerio. Sunny is my favourite comedy of all time, and over the years it's been fun to see the show get a bit more experimental, whether it be an entire noir episode about a doo-doo related mystery, or an episode which entirely takes place in an old black man's dream. These episodes allow them to explore the tropes that they've set up for their characters without having to deal with the consequences, which, for a comedy about 5 lovable but horrible people, can be pretty interesting. You can show their boundaries and how they'd act in situations which they normally wouldn't get into. But today, I want to talk about an episode which gives us one of the best looks into the minds of the characters. The gang saves the day. This episode begins with the gang entering a gas station looking for hot dogs, and while inside, an armed robber enters and says this to the cashier.
Put the money in the bag. Do it fast or I'll blow your brains out.
As the gang hides down an aisle, they all look shocked like, what are we gonna do? And then it shows us, one by one, it zooms into each character and plays out what, in their mind, they're gonna do in this armed robber situation. And very quickly, each turn into their fantasies. And these are what I think say the most about someone. You can tell a lot from people's desires.
My little pony boy, what is it you desire?
Up first is Ronald McDonald, and Mac's fantasy is badass. The complete opposite to Mac's actual character. It shows us how Mac sees himself, or at least how he wants to be seen by others. He believes himself to be a master in martial arts, and everyone thinks he's so cool. He takes out the robber with ease, before it is revealed that he was part of the Yakuza.
Oh shit! Yakuza! Huh? Go! Oh shit!
Then, dozens of people dressed as ninjas come busting through, and it turns into a huge brawl where Mac has to defend himself against wave after wave of
Yakuza!
This scene is filmed like an action movie. The lighting turns from the brightness of the store to dark and moody with a little bluish colour. The music becomes fast and intense. And there is zero regard to real life physics, with Mac just flying through the air, taking out all the punks. There's all these quick cuts and fancy camera work, and before this, and for the rest of the show, it's mostly just static shots or a handheld camera, which fits the show's underproduced feel. Mac is a huge fan of old school macho action flicks, constantly referencing them, and even trying to replicate this sort of filmmaking with Project Badass. So it makes sense that this style would bleed into his fantasy. After he's taken them all out, the gang begins to praise him.
My God, Mac, that was amazing! And that's a great pun, dude! You used the pun right! Yeah, you got the pun right, dude! Yeah! What pun?
This is an important part of his fantasy, because it's not just enough that he saves everyone, he needs to get acknowledgement and credit for it too. Actually, he needs to be seen as a martyr, like Jesus, giving his life while saving them. One of the Yakuza gets a lucky shuriken throw and it hits him in the neck. As he lays dying, he tells the gang,
I don't forgive you.
Because all Mac really wants is attention and respect, 2 things which he never gets due to his own selfish actions.
You guys like me, right?
But it's not over yet. He then goes to heaven, because he would never do a heroic act where he might die in the process if it meant that he wouldn't still be around afterwards. I think if Mac was an atheist, then his fantasy would have just ended after saving the others. But no, he actually still comes out on top despite dying. And the fact that Mac even believes that he would get into heaven, despite killing an innocent man seconds before his own death, just shows his level of delusion. Also, a cool side note, this is the first episode to get the show an Emmy nomination. Next up is D's Nuts. D's fantasy is chaotic. There's so many layers to this one, so strap in or strap on. Right out the gate, the gang are offering her up as a sacrifice and distraction to the robber. And she isn't crazy for thinking that the gang would do this, as in every single scenario that's not hers, she is either hurt or killed.
Waitress, no!
You dick!
Alright, the girl's dead, but we can still save the others.
The guys are seeing this as an opportunity to get rid of her. The gun man is revealed to be a gun woman, despite sounding like this.
Put the money in the bag. Do it fast or I'll blow your brains out.
And Dee manages to talk her down, being given the gun in the process. She then uses that same gun to mow down the boys. It looks like she's going to team up with the robber, but immediately rats her out to the police.
She did it. What? You bitch! You're dead!
Dee is extremely selfish, and her hatred towards other women is seen multiple times throughout the show.
Come on, us ladies, we gotta stick together.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I kind of like being the only woman because it makes me feel special.
She is then told she will need to go into witness protection, allowing her to play out her actress fantasy, being placed in a British manor house. She's now a British butler to some British kids and their British father. She's giving big Alfred vibes, and Caitlin Olsen kills it.
Well done, lad! An extra treat for you!
Mr. Cummings.
I always think it's interesting when a good actress has to play someone who's a bad actress, because making that believable sounds pretty difficult. Then a laugh track and credits start playing. But wait, I thought this was a fantasy. Well, it wouldn't be enough for Dee to just be a convincing actor. She needs the credit and recognition too, otherwise it's worthless. So it's revealed that her role was so convincing that it spawned a television show about her, and now she's a world famous actor, and engaged to famous musician Josh Groban. It makes sense that Dee would bring him into her fantasy, as there's a whole episode where the subplot is Dee wants to go to his show but can't because she's sick. He then sings her a song.
She's got blonde hair, she's perfect in every way, feet not too large, not too small, blonde hair, she's gorgeous, not like a bird.
The gang bullying her and calling her a bird happens so much that part of her fantasy is being told that she isn't one. And the facial expressions that she makes during this song are gold. Like, wow, isn't he so obsessed with me? But oh no, because they soon split before she replaces him with Brad Pitt, often considered to be one of the most desired and attractive men on the planet. Now, Dee's scenario strikes me the most as daydreaming, where it jumps from scene to scene with very little meaning or connection between them. It's like she's in the store and then she thinks, oh man, the gang are probably going to offer me up. I hope they die instead. I'll team up with the girl, but she's more pretty and badass than me. I know, I'll turn her in. Oh, but then what if she comes after me? Oh, I'll just go into witness protection. I'm an amazing actress, so it won't be hard. I'm so good everyone will notice and I'll be a famous actor. And then Josh Groban will be obsessed with me and tell me I'm not a bird. Actually, no, not Josh Groban. Who's better? Brad Pitt. Yeah, Brad Pitt. Dee's life is so horrible and she's bullied so much that she clings on to any kind of fantasy she can. And it's kind of tragic. But what can you do? On to the next one. Up next is Dennis the Menace. Now, this is a very rare thing for It's Always Sunny, but I think Dennis's part of this episode might be my least favourite. I mean, they're all great, but I think whenever you have the chance to dive into Dennis's mind, it just opens the door to so many funny possibilities. And I think in some ways, his scenario goes a little bit against his character. So in his scenario, we see him approach the gunman, and we get a line which I use almost every day.
A fisherman always spots another fisherman from afar.
Dennis is acknowledging that he too is someone who likes to take stuff from people. But whilst the gunman is using force, Dennis is someone who likes to trick people into getting what he wants.
This is about the thrill of wearing another man's skin, feeling his innermost wants and desires, and being in control of his every single move. That's how you get off.
I mean, look at the Dennis system. It's built on manipulation. However, this does not go his way, because after offering him some hard candy, he gets a bullet between the eyes. I mean, you could have just said no, but yeah. And this is where I think it becomes a bit weaker for me, because I can't believe that Dennis would imagine himself being injured. He thinks of himself as a god.
The Golden God!
The smartest man in the room at any one time. And him thinking that he could get outsmarted by a random gunman just doesn't seem in character. He wakes up in the hospital, and his rehabilitation nurse is revealed to be the Channel 5 weather forecaster, the only woman we've ever seen make Dennis feel out of his element and get flustered. She tends to him, nursing him back to his old self. He starts off barely being able to walk, and eventually leads up to doing this kind of shit. I love how it's so clearly a stuntman, and there's no escalation, just can he walk to Olympic level athlete. And as funny as this scene is, I don't think Dennis's fantasy would ever involve a woman taking care of him. He's all about control.
No, because of the implication.
When rollerblading, she is injured, and in a similar situation as he was in the beginning, needing to be rehabilitated. The doctor tells him that her breasts did not survive the accident, and so instead of helping her, he grabs a pillow and suffocates her. Rather than return the favour, he believes that because now she's not as visually appealing to him, she has no use to him anymore, and she's better off dead. A nice touch I like is that in his fantasy, he does appear to be feeling emotion even if for the wrong reasons, something which he previously has admitted not having felt since he was a teenager.
Point is, I am having, this is crazy, but I'm having feelings again. Like some kind of 14-year-old kid or something. I mean, you remember feelings, right?
This is the nearest thing that Dennis can think of to a romance, and boy is it a twisted one. Up next is Frankenstein. In Frank's scenario, he runs over to the hot dogs and starts chowing down like he's Matt Stoney. Just glizzy after glizzy, he becomes the glizzy gobbler. Now, Frank's is the briefest out of all of the scenarios, and it makes sense that they'd have to clip one of the gang's time limit in order to tell all the stories that they wanted to tell this episode. But I think they made a smart choice by making Frank's the shortest. Over the show we see that Frank has some clear issues with his memory and brain function, especially shown in the episode Frank Day. An entire episode shot from the point of view of Frank. We get throwaway lines like this.
Which sadly means we might have to remove it.
Huh? Frank, come in, over.
Oh, shit, I gotta go. Sir, you shouldn't be running anywhere. Your condition may be taken. Out of my way.
And the entire episode is him getting distracted from his very simple task. He's a character who, for the most part, can only focus on one thing at a time. And in this episode, he just wants a hot dog. So that's what he does. He's either forgotten that the gang are even there, or he doesn't care, or both. And what I like about this short fantasy is that the comedy is mainly from the dialogue, with the cops talking about the horrible events which are happening behind him as he's just chowing away.
Alright, the girl's dead, but we can still save the others.
We're so used to praising visual comedy, so it's nice to have some which relies on what you hear. And finally, we have Charles. Charlie is the most innocent and childlike out of all of the gang, and so it fits that he would think of things in animation, but not any old animation, because remember, animation is not a genre and it's not just for kids. It's an art form. There's horror animation, sci-fi animation, but for Charlie's fantasy, it's a Disney style animation, with very bright colours and smooth shading, as well as some exaggerated body features. And in this part of the episode, we get some great visual storytelling. There's only 2 lines.
God, Charlie, that was so brave.
Anything for you, my love.
Now, dialogue is a great tool, but it is just that, a tool. You force yourself to tell your story using only what you can see, all necessary information to not only understand what's going on, but to feel the emotion in the scene needs to be conveyed. It also means you can't look away or you'll have no idea what's happening. All Charlie really wants is to be with the waitress and not have to kill rats anymore. And because Charlie is so childlike and thinks of things in a fairly simple and straightforward way, his fantasy replicates this. So the waitress enters and the gunman turns on her. Charlie throws Dee in front of her before grabbing her and getting out of there. Because he's saved her life, she's finally come round on him and wants a slice of Charlie pie. They go to the marriage store before going to the kids store and starting a big old family, where the girls look exactly like the waitresses and the boys look exactly like Charlie. It shows a lot about Charlie's mind, how he thinks that everything comes from a store. I mean, earlier on in the show, Matt called a fast food chain a hamburger store.
If you want a chip, you could have gotten a bag at the hamburger store.
But this takes it to a whole nother level. The sons get sent off to janitor school, and the daughters get sent to waitress school. Charlie isn't really capable of complex thought. At the time, he's thinking of him, a janitor, and the waitress, a waitress. So those are the only 2 jobs that he can really see their children doing. They both grow old and the waitress dies, and then it turns into Up. The house goes up with a whole bunch of balloons, and so it makes you think, okay, so was Charlie just watching Up that morning and then it kind of bled into his fantasy? Out of all of the scenarios, Charlie's is the least selfish and actually doesn't involve the rest of the gang that much. He doesn't really care what they think of him. Same as Dennis in a way, but whilst Charlie doesn't care because he's happy the way he is, Dennis doesn't care what the others think of him because he believes them to be beneath him. But in the end, they're all as bad as each other. None of them save the others, apart from Mac, but he didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart. He did it so that he could live out his action movie dream. They're all focused on themselves and what would happen to them, and they're not even the ones who have the gun pointed at them. And then we see reality play out, and they all just grab as much shit as they can and get out of there. There was no way that any of their scenarios would come true. So them robbing a bunch of shit seems pretty in line with their selfish characters. It does such a great job of summarising each character in a short amount of time. I feel like you could show this episode to someone who's never seen the show and they get a pretty good idea of what each character is like. However, I think if you wanted to show the dynamics between the characters, then this would not be the right episode. But that is for another video. It's the gang dines out. Howdy. Thank you so much for watching till this part in the video. Thank you, I love you. Goodbye.